Welcome to Living Transplant, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of the transplant program at Toronto General Hospital and brings you open and honest conversations about the transplant experience. My name is Candace, and I'm the Education and Outreach Coordinator for the Center for Living Organ Donation. I'm also a kidney transplant recipient. This is where I developed my passion to support others in their journey to navigate the world of transplant. Full disclosure, I'm not a physician, and I'm not here to give you medical advice. Think of me as your guide through the world of transplant to educate, inspire, pique your curiosity, and fuel your passion. Living Transplant will show you the world of transplant like you've never seen it before. Welcome back to the Living Transplant podcast. Today, I'm joined by the wonderfully creative Chris Smith, who is an organ donor advocate. And later today, we'll be joined by Dr. Marcus Selzner. Thank you so much for co-hosting this episode with me, Chris.
Absolutely, Candace. Thanks for inviting me.
Can you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. So like you were saying, my name is Christopher, last name Smith. I am the son of a former police officer, brother to a superstar in the CEBL basketball league.
Amazing.
A photographer, videographer. I immigrated to Canada back in the early 90s. So if you do your math really quickly, you can figure out how old I am. I came here when I was about 10 years old. I have an interest in videography. I've been doing it for over a decade or so. So yeah, and that's me in a nutshell.
Amazing. Thank you. So I'm wondering, how did you get connected with the center? What's your connection to living organ donation?
Yeah, so my connection is through Sonia. We made a video in celebration. I believe at the time it was the 2-year celebration of her donation to her father that helped save his life. And we sent it into the hospital and they really liked it. So much so that we ended up connecting and talking about other opportunities and things that we can do to further the cause.
That's incredible. And so you mentioned Sonia.
Yeah.
Sonia is your partner. How did you two meet?
Yeah. We actually met at work. At the time, we were both working at the Budweiser stage in downtown Toronto. The year that we met was a couple of months right after she had just done her donation to her father.
Incredible. And you talk about Sonia's donation to her father. That was a liver donation?
Correct.
And how did their surgery go and how are they doing today?
He's doing really well, actually. Yeah. He's in better shape than I am.
That's awesome.
No, every journey has its ups and downs, but the end result for their journey is he's doing really well. He's really happy, and they've added on years to his life that he otherwise wouldn't have had.
That's amazing. And so if people want to watch that video that you made way back when, where can we find that?
You can actually find that on the UHN's YouTube page.
You're somewhat of a little bit of a realm outside of living donation. You started dating the amazing Sonia. She was past that donation process. I'm wondering what piqued your curiosity about that? What made you interested and want to become passionate about living donation? Because since I've met you, I only know the Chris that is this remarkable advocate.
For sure. Through Sonia, through education, and I literally didn't know anything about organ donation prior to meeting her. And it opened up my eyes and it showed me that there's not only an entire world, but there's an entire community of people who are going through transplant or looking for a donor. And it's remarkable, the stories and the resiliency of both donors and recipients. And the more and more I interact with people and I hear their stories, everyone's journey is different, but everyone's journey is the same. And it's really empowering and inspiring at the same time. So that's what piqued my curiosity, and it hasn't gone away since. And it's turned me into an advocate because somebody that you know for sure will need an organ donation at some point in their life. And providing the information to the community is really important.
Awesome. When I first met you, was back in April or March, as we were promoting the National Organ and Tissue Donation Awareness Week and thinking about registering your consent to be a deceased organ donor. At that point, back then, you were not a registered organ donor. And so talk to me a little bit about that. Like, what changed your mind and what did you learn in that process?
So I think at that time, like a lot of people think, you sign your registration card and it automatically makes you a donor. When in reality, it doesn't. You need to be registered for the beadonor.ca. And I thought, why not? The best example of showing what to do is to do it yourself. So I thought, why not? I wanted to be registered and I wasn't registered. So the opportunity to register came up and I thought I should use myself as an example on what to do, some of the things you might think about when you go to register and some of those questions that are in your mind. So that is why I use myself as the example, because I wanted to share that information with as many people as I could.
That's fantastic. And watching that video, you made it so simple for people to be able to watch that and then hop on the website. I feel just grab their health card and just do it. And we always say it's as simple as 2 minutes. And I don't know if people actually clue in and think, oh, it's really
actually
is
2 minutes.
But you showed everyone that it actually is 2 minutes. So I'm wondering, for some of those people who might be on the fence about registering their consent, are there any issues that maybe came up for you in the process, or like you have heard about from our committees, of any kind of fears that may have come up?
Yeah, the one that sticks out the most is you won't receive the level of care to save your life because they want to harness your organs and give it to someone else. And we know that's just simply not true. There's a lot of skepticism that goes along with certain communities about organ donation, but on the website, there's actually a section dedicated to frequently asked questions, and it's actually pretty intensive. There's at least 50 to 75 questions, I believe. So a lot of your concerns are handled right there, and it's all before you accept. So go through the list, read it, educate yourself, and then make that decision. And it only takes 2 minutes.
And the other thing that I was shocked with when I got into this world is you think that once you register as well, that's the end of it, and that I'm registered to donate, so it's just going to happen. But your family has the final say in whether or not that happens. We're having the conversation today. I've had the conversation with my family. I'm sure you've had the conversation with your friends and family as well. And I think it's so important for people to know that at the end of the day, let those people around you know that you are interested in being a donor, so that they know when you pass that is one of your wishes. And what an incredible way to leave a legacy than to potentially save 8 people's lives.
Absolutely. I think we need to normalize talking about it, because that's the part that we don't do. And even myself, until I registered, I actually didn't have that conversation with my family. It's not something that had been brought up before. So normalizing that conversation so that we can have those early talks will allow your family to know your wishes, and maybe even spur someone else to be a donor as well.
When I was diagnosed, when I was 24, we went through the whirlwind of everything. And when things started to settle, we started to learn more about deceased donation. And so across my family, everybody started to register, and we started a campaign on beadonor.ca to get other people registered. And I think at the beginning, my goal was 100. And then I hit that 100 people registering through my profile really quick. And so now my goal is 1,000 people registered. And I think I'm just over 600 now.
That's amazing.
Of people who have clicked my profile. So that's another cool thing that I learned, is you can make your own campaign to have people read your story and then click to register. And for us, it's very common talk now in our family. And even at the time, I think my nephew would have been probably about 5. we had this organ donation float in Cambridge for the Christmas parade that was happening. And so all of us had made these giant cardboard signs of, I received a kidney, I received a liver, register your consent. And so there was all these people on the float, and he was so excited to be on the float. And he made this adorable little sign that is still in my closet today. And it had this big green ribbon and this big green heart in it. It said something along the lines of, my aunt is alive because of an organ donor. And then he put register under, and it's all in like marker and his little 5-year-old hands.
Writing, yeah.
And I remember driving to the parade, and he was so proud of his sign and so excited to be on the organ donor float. And he talked about it with people. And this is just this little 5-year-old kid who was so passionate about sharing my story.
Information.
Yeah. And so you're never too young or too old to learn about something new.
Yeah, and as well as you're never too young or too old to either be a donor or receive donation.
Absolutely. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the ACB Organ Health YouTube channel, because I know you do so much work on that channel with the videos, and it's super close to your heart.
Yeah, absolutely. So the ACB Organ Health channel is a channel that's dedicated to produce content directly aimed at members of the ACB community, being African, Caribbean, and Black. We know that there are inequities both in the actual receiving of healthcare, but also inequities in receiving the information surrounding the healthcare. So the channel is geared at providing content that is geared at our demographic and shows representation of people from our demographic giving the information. The idea is to create a level of comfort in the community so that this information can be shared, because we know that's one of the barriers, is the non-trust of the existing healthcare system. So my role there is to produce content that's in the form of videos, documentaries, podcasts, anything that we can to share the information. The channel is going in its second year now, and we're really proud of the work that we've done so far, and we're really proud of what we have coming up for the future as well.
That's fantastic. And do you have any specific videos or episodes that you're super, super proud about, or that you felt like you really hit the nail on the head for that one?
Right out the gate, I think the very first video with Charles is an outstanding person, a bigger than life personality. I think that's one of my favorite videos that we've created so far. And yeah, again, the remarkableness, I think, for the channel is how many stories there are to tell. If COVID had not been in the way, we would have produced so many more stories, because there are that many more stories to produce. So as soon as we get an opportunity, we're going to. And I'm really proud of what we've done so far.
Amazing. I've gone back and watched a bunch of the episodes, because there's so many incredible Green Table Talk episodes, and then also just informative videos that are on that channel.
And I should point out, it's not just me. The ACB committee comprises of several members who have been through transplant, going through transplant, have been a part of the journey, and are sharing their stories with the community. There's over 15 of us for sure, and our community is growing all the time, and we're definitely welcoming new faces.
Amazing. And if somebody wants to join that committee, they can email us at livingorgandonation@uhn.ca. One of my favorite episodes that I've watched is the Men Who Care episode of the Green Table Talk. It was so touching. My husband was my boyfriend at the time when I was diagnosed and on dialysis, dealing with somebody who is going through organ failure and on dialysis and all of these things that you don't expect a 20-something-year-old to go through. It's remarkable to hear him talk about our journey together, but then to listen to the Men Who Care episode, hearing some of that again through their lens, it's just so touching and heartwarming to hear the perspective of men who are caregivers, because it's not a perspective that we hear often.
All the time. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also, I feel like it helped me as a recipient to feel less guilt about what I put my partner through as a recipient, as somebody on dialysis, hearing those men talk lovingly about their partners and how they would absolutely do it over again if they had to, and how a lot of them were even honored to be the person that was able to care for their partner.
And in most cases, it was a crash course. They had no prior information, no prior knowledge about it. And it was, here's the book, go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like they said, the pressure, but I mean, they stood by their partners and they helped them through those rough times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really touching.
Incredible. And like you said, there's so many other stories on that channel that are so impactful. Again, if you haven't been to the channel, please go and watch. There's so many videos on there.
ACB Organ Health.
What advice do you have for somebody who is interested in learning more or interested in joining this crew of people who are advocates for those of us who are dealing with this?
I would say don't wait. Join. The information is definitely at your fingertips. We need more advocates, and we need people to continue being advocates. There's more that we can do. We can donate blood, right? There's other things that we can do collectively to help each other to live a healthier life. So I would say, yeah, don't hesitate. Reach out to someone. You can reach out to us, ACB Organ Health. Reach out to Candace, and let's bridge a bigger community and share this information.
That's incredible. Thank you so much, Chris.
Absolutely.
Thanks for sharing your story today. And I know anyone listening who is not yet part of our crew, I think your passion and your advocacy will definitely inspire so many people to learn more and move that needle on organ donation. So thank you so much for being one of our champions. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Couldn't be happier.
All right. It is now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Marcus Selzner. Dr. Selzner is currently the surgical director of the Ajmera Liver Transplant Program at the University of Toronto and co-director of the Toronto Abdominal Organ Transplant Fellowship. His research is focused on abdominal organ preservation and perfusion. Welcome, Dr. Selzner.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you for joining us. I'm wondering if you can take us back to where you began your education in medicine and general surgery in Germany. I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about what made you go into that field and what was it like going through that education in medicine?
So I did my training initially in Germany. I started in Germany, and I was inspired by surgery very early on in my career by the fact you can do something with your hands and have a direct impact on a patient's life. And when I started my career in Germany, during the training, I realized there is more to surgery than operating. It also has an aspect of pushing the boundaries, thinking about new things, and inventing new treatments. There's so much more to do. So I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship from the German government to allow me to do research abroad. So I went to the Duke University in North Carolina in the US, where I did a 3-year research fellowship, which was focused on developing new strategies of treatment in the field of organ preservation, organ transplantation over there. And my boss in the lab in Duke became chair of surgery in Switzerland while I was there. So basically, he moved to Switzerland, and I went with him to Switzerland, where I finished my clinical training. I did a fellowship in liver surgery in Zurich, and he sent me then to Canada to get further training in liver transplantation. And So I moved here, and then I stayed on, and I'm still here on staff now, doing liver, kidney, and pancreas transplantation.
Incredible.
That's amazing. Wow. So why specifically hepatology?
I would say I'm a liver, kidney, and pancreas transplant surgeon, so abdominal organ transplantation. I think it's a passion, of course, because we have dramatic impact on patients' life. It's many things in medicine and surgery are important, and equal important, I would say. I personally like the transplant field so much because we have people who are very sick, an organ is failing. In liver disease, you may die if the organ fails, and we can replace the organ and we make this patient better again. So we have a very direct, serial, immediate impact on the patient's life, where we operate patients who are really sick sometimes, and we reverse this. By replacing the sick organ, the patient becomes again back to his normal life. And this is the same also for pancreas transplant. These are patients with diabetes. So patients have decades of diabetes, and we replace the pancreas, and the patient is not diabetic anymore. He can eat and drink anything he likes. And renal failure, very similar. You're on dialysis. It's a terrible situation in your life. You have to go to dialysis 3 times a week for hours and hours, and you get a new kidney, and things are different. You have normal kidney function. You can go on with your life. So this is, from a physician point of view, very satisfying procedures, because we direct impact on the patient's life, and patient is much better, and you see what you're doing, and it's really rewarding.
There's not much else there in the medical field that has that like immediate change in people. I've talked about it before, but I remember waking up from my surgery for my kidney transplant and immediately acknowledging that, yes, I was in a lot of pain, but I felt different than I had potentially ever felt in my life. And that I had so much energy, which some people might say was also the prednisone, but I had so much energy that I was wondering if this was how normal people felt, because it just was so new.
Yeah. And many patients have been long time patients and sick, and you may forget what life is supposed to be. People do dialyzing for a long time, or people are diabetics for decades. And it is nice to make this go away and make it better again. And today people can live with the new grafts for a long time with good function and enjoy a normal quality of life with little restrictions, I would say.
So speaking of normal life, we just posted recently a wonderful picture of you with your dog on social media. And in your normal life, you have 2 physicians in the same home.
Yeah, my wife is a liver physician, and she is also specialized in liver transplantation. And we met actually at Duke during our research fellowship. So we both came. She came from France, from Paris. I came from Germany, and we met actually during liver research. And that also, then our path continued. We're both passionate about liver disease, and we continued our training together, got married, we have children and a dog. And we're working together. So Naza is the medical director of the live donor liver transplant program in Toronto. And it is actually common that we share patients. We go on rounds together sometimes. Of course, it's a team. There are many other people involved. So it's a larger group, but within the group, our path crosses actually also in hospital many times. And of course, we even discuss at home sometimes between us things to how to make things better and how to improve strategies.
Amazing.
Amazing. Dr. Selzner, what are some of the symptoms of liver failure, and when would someone need a liver transplant? Like, what are some of the things that someone could look out for that are happening to them that could give them an idea that their body is changing?
So I would say there are 2 different reasons why you would need a liver transplant. One could be liver failure, cirrhosis, liver disease. And this is usually patients who get unwell over a prolonged period of time, they get maybe yellow in the color of their skin. They may acquire water in their belly. Their clotting factors in the blood changes. They have bruising. If it advances, they may get confused. They may have abnormal bleeding tendencies. And these patients have a shrunken, scarred liver and can become very sick, needing a transplant urgently. The other group is patients with liver cancer that cannot be operated. These patients may have normal liver tests, and they do not have any signs of liver failure disease, but they have a cancer in the liver that can't be taken out. And then the only treatment is taking the whole liver out and replacing it so that the cancer goes away with the liver. And these two groups basically are both, of course, equally important and need transplants, but they present very differently. One is present with liver failure, the other one comes to us with a cancer.
And so for people who have cancer, does that often remove the problem? If you remove the liver with the cancer and replace it, that's often
because nearly in all cases with liver cancer, the liver has an inflammation. So they do have actually a liver problem that just didn't result in liver failure, but they have inflammation of the liver because of a virus infection, for example, and the liver is making new cancers. So often it's better to take the whole liver out and replace it with a new liver, because the reason the cancer came in the first place is also taken care of. So in patients who have liver cancers, even if it could be taken out, it might be still better to replace the liver, because these livers often tend to produce new cancers over time. Okay. And then it's a balance about what is more meaningful in each individual patient's. Is a resection better or is the transplant better? But this is a discussion we have in a team, and we look at each patient separately at this.
One thing that I've learned in being in part of this world is the world of acronyms. I'm wondering if you can explain what that MELD score is and how that relates to transplant.
So the MELD score is made up of blood tests, which gives a number, and the number characterizes how likely is a patient to die waiting without a transplant.
Okay.
So basically, it characterizes the urgency of the transplant. And according to the MELD score, patients get ranked on the waiting list because we want to transplant the sickest patients first. So the patients who are at highest risk of dying will get the liver offer earlier or first. So the principle is sickest patients first, because liver disease we can't bridge. In renal failure you can dialyze, in liver disease we cannot. So the MELD score is a blood test derived score, therefore it's actually quite objective. Mm-hmm. And it helps us to rank the patients, making sure the one in highest needs gets the transplant first.
Oh.
Wow. So during liver surgery, what is the difference between the surgery for a living donor and for a recipient?
So basically, it's very different. So in liver, we are very fortunate, the liver can regrow. It's the only solid organ in the body that can actually regrow to its full size. So in liver transplant, you do not need a full liver normally. You can also do with a half liver. So in liver transplant, we can offer living donation. That means family members, friends, but even co-workers, strangers can offer to donate half of the liver to someone in need. And the liver will regrow in the donor and in the recipient. So after 4 weeks, the liver has regrown to its full size, and the donor and recipient will have a full liver then going forward. The operation is very different, of course, because in the donor, the highest or the most important aspect is safety. So we do a very careful, very thoughtful evaluation process, and we want to take enough liver out that the recipient can live with this, but not too much that we have no risks or minimal risk for the donor. So we have a very specialized team that would that would decide where we divide the liver into two pieces, that one stays behind with the donor and the other piece come out with the recipient. And then there's a second team that will implant the liver after removal of the recipient's liver and connect this half liver, we call it, then into recipient, and then it will grow subsequently in the full size. And we are in Toronto the biggest living donor liver transplant program in the Western Hemisphere, I would say. So we have a large experience of this, and the outcome is really excellent.
Incredible. And with that liver regrowth, how long does it generally take for that liver to regrow to a full organ?
So in about 4 weeks, it regrows to 90%.
Wow.
Of the liver, and then the last 10% will need a bit more time.
Mm-hmm.
But the growth is really fast. So within 4 weeks, the majority of this liver has regrown. The missing part doesn't regrow; the remaining part gets bigger. So it's not that what it has missed will come back. The piece you give to the patient, or which keeps, enlarges, so that the amount of liver you have in the end is the same. So the volume of liver you will have is the same. It will look a bit different in shape-wise afterwards.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I didn't know that. For some reason, I thought it was different amphibians that regrow a limb, that the liver then regrows its other piece that it's missing. But
no, it does not. But it's, for some reason, it knows how much liver you need. So it's an interesting thing. We don't understand it completely. The liver knows how big it's supposed to be for a certain body. So if the liver is too small, it gets bigger. Mm-hmm. And if we give a big liver to a small person, it would shrink a bit. So the liver adjusts its size to the optimal size, but it does not regrow the missing part. It enlarges the part it has.
I was going to say similar to a turtle inside of its tank.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't know much about turtles. I don't know about turtles, but it's actually true. So if you give a piece of a liver to someone, every single liver cell will start dividing. It's actually amazing that it's like a signal to the whole liver. They all pick up the slack, and every liver cell in this graft starts multiplying until the optimal liver mass has been reached, and then they all stop. It's like the whole team picks up and they all chip in. It's actually amazing.
That is amazing. And so for somebody who donated a piece of their liver for a child, would that liver continue to grow as the child did until it reached its adult size?
Absolutely, yeah. So it's actually, for a child, it's even nicer because the child often needs only a very small piece. So often it's parents or relatives giving to a baby. Often it's babies and they need a very small piece. So we can actually take a very small piece off into the child. And as the child grows into adulthood, it becomes a full-size grown adult, the liver piece will grow appropriately and always stops when it's supposed to be. So the adult later on, if you give a baby of a couple of 100 grams and later on it's a man of 90 kilograms, the liver will enlarge as it should be and will have always the right amount of liver volume.
So now I totally understand why liver is a fascinating organ for hepatologists or anyone involved in the liver world, because that's just so unique and so interesting to have an organ that works together to build the optimum size, I guess. That's so incredible.
Yes, but I would say all organs are fascinating. Kidneys are equally amazing. We all say kidneys make urine, but they make so much more, actually. So kidneys are complex organs. They don't just filter urine either. They have a very integrated mechanism to filter the right amount and reabsorb other things. So we have hundreds of liters of fluid coming through the kidney every day, and they make 2 liters of urine of the right composition. It's a feedback mechanism involving hormones and neurons to make it happen. So it's other organs, there's a world behind it, no? And the pancreas is very similar. Making insulin and hormones is not just a pump you switch on. They have to know how much and when and how to respond and when how to stop. It's amazing to learn about the organs and and what is involved in the place together. And it never fails. Right? You cannot have an organ that is sometimes right. They have it doing it right every day, all day long.
All the time.
All the time, yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. Thinking about some of the new advances that have been happening at UHN, we've spoken in 2 of our podcasts about the remarkable ex vivo machine. And I know some of your research you've done in regards to optimizing those organs. Thinking about when an organ is donated from a deceased donor, in the movies or in TV shows, you see them rush them out of the hospital and run them down the halls because they only have minutes to transplant it. But I'm wondering what that optimum time that an organ could live outside of the body before it starts to deteriorate, and how that ex vivo machine has changed that for us.
Traditionally, organs were cooled down after transplant, after donation, in order to keep them alive until transplant. And cooling down is basically slowing down your metabolism. It reduces the need for oxygen, but it does not actually take it off. You still need actually oxygen and a little bit. And organs don't like to be on call. It's like holding your breath. How long can you hold your breath? For a while, but does it mean you're getting better? It does not. The time between donation and transplant was always a critical time because organs were cold, they had no oxygen. It was an unnatural kind of situation. And it's just like slowing down the process of deterioration, but not stopping it. So any organ will get worse over time on the cold. If you have a very good organ to start with, it can reach a bit longer. And if you have an organ that was not perfect in the beginning, it can stop shorter. Different organs had different flexibility. The heart was always the one with the most shortest time. Then lung was a bit better, and then liver, kidney, and pancreas have a bit more, but it was never good. Okay. And the longer it goes, the worse it will get. So we always had to rush, and we still do, of course, cold storage. And we have to time it, and we have to keep going, and we have a plane waiting, we have an ambulance waiting. So it's really worked through that. When the donor comes, donor retrieval is done, the ambulance is waiting. If it's far away, we drive to the airport. There's a plane ready to go. We fly to Toronto. The OR in Toronto is already booked, and then we get started no matter what time of the day or the night, and we work around the clock to make this all happen. And if we respect the timeline, we're well organized, and we select the organs very carefully, it works, obviously, and we can do it. But it was never supposed to be this way. It was always a B choice because we had no other option. So that was the only thing we can do. It's like a camping cooler with ice. If you have food, you keep it cold. As we all know, it will last longer, but it will not last forever. So the new technology which we are developing and which we're also pioneering in Toronto, the lung team was first, and liver and kidney and pancreas now are at different stages of development, changes everything for us, because now we're not cooling organs down anymore. We don't slowing down the process. We keep the organs warm, perfused, and we give the organs that it needs during this time: oxygen, nutrition, we remove toxins. So we have put everything around. Instead of slowing it down, we're now trying to pretend the organ is still in the body. We give it oxygen, it has flow, we give him albumin. So we try to fool the organ, thinking it's still in the body. It still works outside the body. The liver will make bile, it produces clotting factors, the kidney might make urine, the pancreas is making insulin. So we are trying to make the organ happy. And actually what we learned is we can achieve several things. First of all, we can preserve organs longer because it's not holding its breath. It's getting oxygen, it's getting nutrition. So it can actually do things. Second, we learn more about the organ. So when it's outside the body working, we can study it and see, okay, how good is the organ? Because organs come in all different sizes and shapes and ages. Some are from older donors, younger donors. We often don't know really what happened with a donor sometimes. So having the organ on an ex vivo perfusion setting makes us understand how good is it working and how it's functioning. It's like test driving a car. You wouldn't buy a car that you just heard about. You like to turn around the block a couple of times and see how does it feel, how does it drive. Same with the organ. It's much better to see, is the liver making bile? What is the clotting factors? Is it using glucose? How is the flow in the organ? You learn so much about the organ that my prediction of how it will work in the recipient gets so much better. So if I talk to the recipient and I know the liver has worked in the box, I'm very confident this liver is going to work also after transplantation. So my level of confidence gets better. The other thing is we can actually modify the graft. What we're also learning now is a graft that is outside the body in a machine, we can manipulate it. We can repair it. We can try to change things. We can prepare it for the transplant. So we can improve the organ actually in preparation of the transplant and get the patients better grafts.
Wow.
We've been doing paired kidney donations since 2004, which doesn't seem that long ago, but it was 18 years ago. Where are we in regards to a paired liver exchange program?
So we did paired liver exchange, but not as many. In kidney, it's routine. This is now well established. We have a national system. So we fly kidneys around the country as we need it. For liver, it's more difficult. It's a bigger operation. There's not expertise everywhere to do this. So the expertise is not equally distributed. It needs specialized surgeons with experience. So this isn't as easy, but it has been done and we're offering it, but it's not as common. It's the living donation is a bigger deal for many aspects, surgery, blood bank, and logistics than the kidney transplant, which more hospitals can offer, and patients are distributed also differently.
There's such an organ shortage across the world, and kidney paired exchange, I feel like that was a huge jump in the right direction. I'm wondering if there's other liver care or liver transplant innovations that you can speak to that are going to help bring us in that direction to bring more organs into the pool for potential recipients.
So basically, from a research point of view, we have, of course, we're working on different new things, which are in different stage of development. And it's always hard to predict when it will reach the clinical stage. But it's in part of our mission in Toronto is particularly not just do the operation, but also develop the therapy for tomorrow. In the lung team, Dr. Seipel, for example, is working on removing the blood type in lungs. So he has a model to make the blood type becoming less important, that maybe we can then exchange organs better independent of the blood type. In the research lab, we also investigate how we could induce tolerance, how we make livers or any organ less immunogenic. Maybe we can reduce anti-rejection drugs in the future, or maybe avoid them even, which would make the organs last much longer, which also, if the organs last much longer, we don't have to retransplant patients, and that would give us also more organs. We're also working on novel things which are in the early development, but could we build organs? So one thing is, could we, from stem cells, create kidneys or other organs that we made organs customized for specific recipients? This is something I would say we're working on. It's research. It's hard to say when it will come and how to develop. But this is how you dream about something new. This is how it starts. So you have an idea, you have a vision, maybe look crazy at the moment, but then you push it along the way, and maybe the next person will pick it up and bring it further. And one day it will be there, and we can make organs or make organs that are not requiring anti-rejection drugs. So this is a continuous process, what we are doing and developing. And that's also the nice thing about it. That's the passion, not repeating the same operation every single day, but also thinking about how can it look like in 10 years? What will be different? How can we improve it? How make it better for our patients? And what will be the change coming up?
And for a person who takes anti-rejection medication every day, that is music to my ears, right? I take 3 anti-rejection medications. But even 10, 15 years ago, it was such a big fear for patients of what is that anti-rejection medication going to do to my life compared to what dialysis is going to do. And I say it time and time again, but for me, even the worst day with my kidney transplant is far better than my best day that I had on dialysis, even with the anti-rejection medication. I think a lot of people to hear that we're moving in the direction of less medication. Even with the medication, I always tell people that my life transplanted is just so much more beautiful than what it was when I had to do treatment and dialysis.
I never been on dialysis myself, of course, but I hear it many times from the patients. And clearly, I would say the data also suggests, despite the operation and the immunosuppression, at least your life expectancy and your health is so much better with a transplant. The kidney is working for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can imagine that no dialysis machine can match that by being 3 times a week for 4 hours, 5 hours. So having someone on your side who works for you all day long is always much better.
Yeah, absolutely. I was reading about some of the research that's been done in deceased donor liver transplants and saw an article about, or a publication about, women who are at a disadvantage with respect to access to deceased donor liver transplants. You could talk a little bit about that, and does living donation offset that in any way?
Women are disadvantaged for 2 reasons, because often they're a bit smaller. Okay. Just naturally, the overall, I would say many women are a bit smaller in size, and smaller people have a general disadvantage because they can only get smaller organs.
Okay.
So we can't put a big liver into a small person. So if you're a 1.95 meter man with 100 kilograms, you have a big belly. So any liver I can put in there. If you're a 50 kilogram woman, suddenly I have to find a much smaller liver to go in. So it's a space problem.
Okay.
So it's a space problem. It is one thing that smaller people in general need a smaller graft, and bigger people can take any graft. I can take a small liver into a big person, but I can't pick a big liver into a small person. And in general, I would say on a population base, I would say that that smaller people in general have a problem with this. Live donation is a great option because you only have half a graft to deal with. So suddenly the liver is only half the size. Right. So actually for women in this regard, that is very good, because we have the live donor graft is smaller by per se. So that would help this scenario.
Interesting. The
other thing is that the second disadvantage for women is that the MELD score we talked about in the ranking includes a creatinine as one of the values, and the creatinine is depending on the muscle mass.
Right.
If you have more muscle mass, the value tends to be a bit higher. It's not gender specific, but I would say on the population base, you could see that the muscle mass tends to be a bit bigger in men than in women. So there is a tendency of men having this value a bit higher by nature.
Right.
So the MELD score is a little bit shifted in them in this regard. The severity of liver disease will override this at some point. If you get sick, this will become unimportant. But on a population base, on a larger pool, there is a slight shift that men tend to have a slightly higher creatinine, and there is a better starting point in this regard. So live donation will help with both, because first of all, if you have a live donor, family member, friend, whoever, it's your liver. So it doesn't matter really where you stand on the list. If you have a donor, it's your liver, independent from your position of a list, you will get this organ. So the live donation is a very good tool to get the liver at the right time point, because you don't want to wait until you're really sick. In our system, where the sickest gets the liver first, the problem is you have to get very sick first to get the liver organ. But of course, you don't want to have a major surgery when you're really sick. You like to have it earlier, when you are sick enough to need a transplant, but not really debilitated sick that you are really in bad shape. So the live donation is perfect for this scenario. You get the liver at the right time. The MELD score will not be relevant because it's your organ. Your friend gives you a liver, you will get the organ. And since it's partially an organ, it will also, the size is less important because we have a better chance putting a half liver into a smaller person than a full liver.
Wow.
So
Interesting.
speaking of donations, there's a large anonymous liver donation community at UHN. What is it that's unique about this program you think that's generating these results?
We have probably the largest anonymous liver donation community in the world in Toronto. And it all started with a child needing a liver donor very urgently. And none of the parents could donate for medical reasons. And they reached out to the public. And there was a huge response. People want to help this child, and we did. So a stranger gave his liver to this child, and the child survived. And with this, actually, the whole anonymous program started, and we actually became more aware that there are many people out there who want to do something good for altruistic reasons, for no benefit for themselves. People want to give back to the community. People may have been fortunate themselves in many different ways, and now they want to pay back to the group. And in Toronto, we have fostered this spirit. We have a live donation center in Toronto, which is also unique, which is facilitating, reaching out to the community, speaking to people interested, and making information sessions, having a presence online and in social media, and facilitating this. And it might be also a Canadian thing. I could see that Canadians are nice
Very
people.
nice. Yeah.
and maybe the amount of nice people here who want to reach out and help people is bigger. It's amazing people, I would say. It's the people who give liver or kidneys, which is, I would say, also happens, who want to give back to the pool. You can also give one kidney and help patient on dialysis. They're amazing people. They do something selfless, heroes. They take a risk for themselves to help someone else. It's like jumping in the water to pull out someone who drowns. You don't think about yourself. You think about the other person, and you do something that you don't have to do, but you do it anyway, and you save someone else's life or make someone's life much better.
I've met a handful of people now through working at the center who have been double anonymous donors. So donated a kidney at one point and then felt that it was such an amazing process that then they've gone back and donated a piece of their liver, and all anonymously and all just from the goodness of their heart. And it's amazing to see these people who step forward to do something like this, both as an anonymous donor and then, of course, the donors who know the people as well are just as remarkable. And I'm a person who probably wouldn't be here without my living donor. So it's amazing that we have these people in the world who do larger acts of kindness. I sometimes will pat myself on the back when I do my little acts of kindness, but there's people out there who are donating organs to save lives, and it's amazing.
You know, they're true heroes. It's also a special group of people, and what they do is incredible in this regard. And of course, they are actually saving people's lives. That is what they do. Huh?
And there's an interesting study as well that I believe it was a TED Talk about the brain of the altruistic organ donor, and that the hippocampus is actually larger in those altruistic donors. And it's a whole TED Talk about the brain of these altruistic donors and a profile about who they are. And it's really fascinating. So if anybody's interested in looking that up, you can find it. But the other thing that they found often is donors are also pet owners. So they rescue pet owners too. So it's a really fascinating research study about donors.
Is there any particular surgery or patient or story that has a uniqueness that has stood out to you in your journey so far?
In the liver field, we have what we call fulminant liver failure. It's a rare condition where people, out of the blue, they were totally healthy before, suddenly liver stops working.
Wow.
And these people needed a liver transplant super urgently within days, otherwise they will die of this. And that's probably the most dramatic situation in transplant, when someone gets sick suddenly who was totally fine days before, and then you have only a very short time to find an organ offer. And in these cases, we get a Canadian-wide access. So these people get preference on the national level, and we get livers wherever it comes from and do this. So this, I would say, is probably this sticks out the most. What's
that called? What do you refer to that as?
Fulminant liver failure, where basically, by definition, the liver was not diseased, it was healthy, and suddenly it stopped. It's rare, but it happens a few times a year. We have these patients in Toronto, and then you're really waiting for the organ to come, and then you go to the operating room right away and try to turn it around in time. These, I would say, the times it sticks out really well, where you're sitting on the edge waiting for this phone call, get the organ offer, and then you go.
Wow.
And is that something that was, sorry to cut you off, is this something that was sitting dormant waiting to happen, or?
No, it can be, it's numerous different things can cause it. Can be a poisoning it can be medication you took and you reacted on. Sometimes it could be a sudden virus infection, which happened. So that different things can cause it. It's not one thing, but it's defined for patients who have no chronic liver disease. But for any given reason, the liver stops working suddenly.
We have our new campaign, the Great Actions Leave a Mark campaign, all about living donors and recipients and showcasing their scars. And one of the people who's involved in that is a young mother whose 4-year-old son went into liver failure very abruptly. And she talks very openly about what that process was like. She said she went from not even really knowing that her son was sick to then being at Sick Kids. And then with a couple days, she says, hearing the T word, that transplant was going to be what was going to have to happen. And she says that it was so shocking. She was working on writing a will and didn't even know that living donation was a thing, but just thought, I need to save my son in however way I can. And within under basically a week, she said she was worked up, running back and forth between UHN and Sick Kids. He's thriving now. I don't know what it would be like to be in one of those scenarios, and you have to go through. This is your day-to-day of saving people's lives. How do you deal with that as well, with all of these people that at the end of the day, it is a life or death situation?
It's difficult. It's a lot of responsibility. It's really a burden you take, for the better and worse. You deal with it by being a team. You don't want to be alone and just doing your own decisions. So it's important you work in a team with other surgeons and liver doctors, hepatologists, to share this, discuss cases, discuss patients. And often it's not as clear what is the best path forward. So you have to get input from other people. It's not a field for people who are only lonely wolves, want to work on their own. It's a field for people who want to work in a team, get other opinions, and try to find consensus. And you thrive because usually it goes well, and patients get better, and you really get rewarded for everything. But you also have days when it doesn't go well. It happens, and you have to know this working in this field. But you keep going because usually it dominates a good outcome, and that's why you can take occasionally also the failure and the setback. You live and you get going because of the majority of patients who do well, and you help and you improve.
Incredible. I do have one last question for both of you that is not transplant related. And if you listen to the podcast, this question is coming, but I'm wondering, I'll start with you, Chris. If you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be?
Okay, if I was a tree, I think I would be a banana tree.
Okay.
Yeah. I grew up in Jamaica and there was always banana trees everywhere. So I think I would be a banana tree and sprout many fruits.
Amazing. Thank you. And what about you, Dr. Selzner?
I probably envision myself more like a palm tree because I see myself at the coastline, close to the ocean, you're facing the storm and you try to weather the storm and still keep standing.
Amazing. That's fantastic. Thank you both. That's fantastic. So I want to thank you so much, Chris, for joining me as the co-host and for sharing your personal journey with advocacy and organ donation. And thank you so much for being a champion to those of us who are recipients and donors. And
Absolutely.
to you, Dr. Selzner, for all of the remarkable work that you do every day and for continuing to push those barriers and find new innovative ways to create care for those of us in need. So thank you both so much for being here today.
It was a
Thanks
pleasure.
for having us.
Thank you so much.